I write papers and I'll call people out and they don't like that. And then they say, you don't get to publish because I didn't like what you said. And so the reviews came back on so many of my works being like, methodology 10 out of 10, would read it again, love all that. What I hate is how this makes me feel. And so we're not going to let you publish that. Yeah. And I got receipts, but yeah, like there's just so many reviews where like I just disagree with you in your view, and so I don't recommend that you get published, but thanks, you know. And so finally I was like, you know what? I was reading some works of a critical scholar whose advice in these situations was to just create a space where you can do what you want to do.
Have you enjoyed listening to the IncrediPaul podcast? Are you looking for a way to support it? Or maybe you just want some swag? Check out the IncrediPaul store today. We have shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, and so much more. Go to IncrediPaul.org, IncrediPaul.org, and click on the store link. Or go to the link in my socials bio and click on the IncrediPaul shop. Looking forward to seeing your IncrediPaul look.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferranbi, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. Today, I have the honor of having Dr. Vanessa Rosa on the show. She is a research activist for equity in science education through the Cuvette Collective, which includes Cuvette Catalyzed and Cuvette Empowered. So that was a little bit about you, but Vanessa, how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm the daughter of immigrants and the granddaughter of freedom fighters in Cuba.
Wow.
It's been my genetic lineage and my heritage to pick up where my family left off and try to do two things, which is both appreciate the opportunity that we have in the United States while also recognizing the need for freedom and justice and equity reform. And my way of doing that is in science because I liked books more than people growing up, and that's how that turned out. So nice to see you, Paul.
Yeah, nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me
And
too.
so right off the bat, I pronounced your name wrong. It's
You're
Vanessa.
fine. That's okay. Yeah. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do the accent. Like Vanessa Rosa Santos. You don't have to do all
Vanessa Rosa.
that.
I rather
Yeah.
say your name correctly.
It's okay. I said your name wrong on mine too, so now we're even. I said Farhan B, I think. Farhan B or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah,
no, it's,
power and B.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We're
The
even.
accent. Yeah, now we're even.
Yeah.
But that's amazing as far as being a daughter of immigrants. I directly relate it to that as far as being a first generation immigrant from Lagos, Nigeria. And I love what you said as far as how you're doing it is through science. And can you talk more about that as far as what you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because my family, they try to understand what I do, but explaining it to them is extremely hard because
Mm,
I'm the first one in our family to go to college, let alone to get a PhD. And
mm,
so explaining it to them of like, so there's theory and the way that we know the world, and my job is to take that line and just advance it just a little bit farther. And the line that I'm choosing to advance is in equity issues related to the teaching and assessment of chemistry. And so it's such a niche thing, and the
mm,
idea of tests even being important and how equity relates to that, it can be a lot to process. So it's a difficult thing to explain, but you know, being a first generation American comes with a variety of inherited roles that you play because you're the explainer to your family, and then you're also the advancer of that generation because you're the first one there. But yeah, just you know, pushing that boundary in terms of science and deciding that that's my way to do it. It's not something I decided all in one day. I had all these layers of influence of people, and I have to say that you know, I had my good layers of influence, which was my
mm,
family who are incredible and you know, as is stereotypical amongst immigrants, but we're all very
Mm,
hardworking in my family, and we've instilled that in one another. But what I really also had was the influence of this, like, I just had a lot of spite. I had a lot of people tell me that my physicality was not meant to be in the science world, and that
really? How
I've been told
so?
to marry for money and divorce for love. I've been told that my
What?
role is to be pretty and quiet and not to
What?
do that. The machismo. Yeah, I
Oh,
got a lot of that. I got high school teachers who told me not to worry about studying because I'm just going to be
are you
pregnant as a
serious?
teenager anyway. I've had, oh yeah, I've had professors
Oh
who hit
man.
on me and wanted to date me and not really
Oh
care
my
about my own
God.
education and my growth as a professional. So I've gotten it from both ends, where I've gotten this beautiful
Mm,
influence from my family. I've had really great
yeah.
mentors in academia, but I also have a lot of
Yeah.
spite that I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this anyway, even though I'm not supposed to have a voice here, because it's just that's my freedom. I want to be in this space, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Wow.
be here.
That's disheartening to hear, but I know that's something that is more common than it should be. And I know I feel like that's a lot of the work that you're doing as well. Is that correct?
Well, a lot of my work, so what I'm experiencing with that conversation, or what I was bringing up, was more of this like sort of
Mm,
genderized um, prejudices, or I don't
yeah.
know, just misogyny that was kind of thrusted upon me. But a lot of my work actually has to do with
Okay.
more racial equity, and that I'm
Mm,
fairly white passing and experience a lot of privilege on
mm,
those realms, unfortunately. And so being able to deconstruct that and recognize the impact it has on
mm,
an assessment level has been something I've had to learn and do a lot more listening on than
mm,
talking on. And so it's as much as, doing gender studies would be
mm.
fascinating. It's racial equity is where I've ended up
Okay.
on a
No,
professional
I can
level.
definitely understand that. They're both very important. And at what point did you start to gravitate towards that? Was that something that just kind of happened, or like through your PhD or undergrad? Like, kind of talk me through that.
Yeah. So for me, it was, I mentioned the genderized kind of
Hmm.
fronts that I had to overcome. There
Yeah.
was a little bit of it that was racialized, like the comment about being pregnant anyway. That one has some
Oh,
intersectionality to it because Latinos and Latinas, we can be, Latinx can be perceived as having children young because of our cultural
mm,
norms and things like that.
mm, mm,
So I did experience a bit of that. I have had situations, and I could talk about them, but they're so minor compared to what most people go through. Just enough to say that I experienced some personally before getting in academia. And then I fell in love with teaching chemistry, particularly because people talked about how much they hated chemistry, you know?
so,
And
why do
so
so many people hate chemistry? I don't
uh,
understand.
when you introduce yourself as a chemist, is it like 9 out of 10 who go like, I hated chemistry? It's so
Yeah,
wrong.
when I tell people I'm a chemical engineer, they're like, so I thought it was just around engineers because most engineers don't like chemistry. So every time I tell them, they're like, I hate chemistry. But so I didn't realize it was just widespread people not liking chemistry.
At least that's been my experience. Almost like
Yeah.
9 out of 10, I would say. That's a made up statistic, but I would say the vast majority will be like, oh, you are involved with chemistry, you and all of you in your field. I hate all of it. Throw it all in the trash. And
Oh
so,
man.
I can't help but love an underdog. And so I
Yeah.
really wanted
Yeah.
to study chemistry just so that I could teach it better than what we were being taught. And I
Mm,
just really got into it for that reason. And I loved it so much. And getting the opportunity to teach it in a way that I thought was engaging was really fun. And I got
mhm.
the opportunity to work at a community college, and I really got to see between, studying chemistry at a university school, a state school, and teaching chemistry at a community college. Even
Mm.
there was some racial disparity that was just
Oh
very
wow.
apparent. It's just
How
so
so?
apparent. Well, I just saw that I had a lot of students who were coming in, and the way that I was interacting with them, that didn't seem to translate into the room where departmental conversations were being had about what to do with those students. So, for
Mm,
example, my interactions with them suggested that they're wonderful students, they're showing up, they're working hard.
mhm,
They also have a lot of additional burdens of family time issues, sometimes economic issues, access to food.
mhm.
And then they have all of these other wonderful strengths where they have great family support. They have a lot of engagement with their sciences that they're studying. So I just noticed a more nuanced conversation, whereas in the department rooms, I heard a lot of deficited speak around the students of like at
Oh,
risk, and these students
oh,
are just troubled students, or they're
oh,
not
wow.
likely to succeed. Just a lot of
Oh,
like a lot of
man.
hate, and
Yeah.
it got me feeling very like, are you all noticing that the majority of the students that you're speaking ill of are of a particular race? Like that is kind of messed up,
Mm,
don't you think? And people would be like, oh,
yeah.
it's not about race, it's not about that. And it's just, okay, maybe it isn't, but at the same time, what you're doing isn't helpful. So let's, I mean, it is about race, but let's just deconstruct it as though it isn't, because you're
Right.
not being able to comprehend that.
Yeah,
It's, yeah,
seriously.
yeah, at the
It
teaching
sounds like,
level is really, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, it sounds like unconscious bias at its finest.
Absolutely, yeah. It was in those teaching experiences that I realized that that's what I wanted to do, and I got passed
Mm,
up for this promotion I was really excited about because they were going to
mm,
hire. I was an assistant or an adjunct professor who was also
mhm.
working in the resource center as a tutor,
Yeah.
and they had an opening
Wow.
as a professor, and I thought like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
perfect for that. I'd like to do
Yeah.
it. I had a master's, I was all set. And I got passed up because the person, they had an outside hire who had a PhD, and they said like it was pretty equal, but the PhD is what got them there. And so I thought, well, okay, let's go then. I need a PhD. That's all you had to say. I'm off. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to school now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I did research to find who was studying students who are perceived in that way, and I
Mhm.
found a scholar who was doing that at the University of South Florida, and that's the rest of that journey.
That's amazing. So then what was your master's in? Was it also in chemistry as well or something else?
It was in pharmaceutical chemistry. Yeah, I thought I was
Pharmaceutical.
going to be making medicine. My whole track was like, oh, the only doctor is a medical doctor, because I didn't know. I'm first generation, right? And then I went to college
Mm,
and I was like, oh, there's like research doctors so that they don't have to
mm.
deal with some of the trauma of, having patients. And
Yeah,
so
right.
I started doing that and got into it, and I fell in love with pharmaceutical chemistry and medicinal
Mm,
chemistry because I just find diseases fascinating. And
mm.
um, and from there, I fell in love with teaching and decided to do my PhD in chemistry, but with an emphasis on critical theory and how we teach and assess.
That is amazing. I love that. Just the
Yeah.
the journey that you had as far as discovering it and going deeper into what you really wanted to do.
It was a meandering path, but I think all the best ones meander, right?
Yes, I agree. Especially on this show a lot. I want to make it clear to people that it is not impossible, but very unlikely that what you wanted to do you when you first got to college is what you're still going to want to do. Maybe even when you're leaving college, or not to talk of like 5 years later, like it changes and
Yeah.
it kind of morphs into what you want just because we there's only so much life you've experienced when you're 18 coming into college, and I think college opens up that world, and then getting a master's opens it more, and PhD more and more, and then and there's so many paths that you can create for what you or truly want to do.
I agree, and I'm so glad you're normalizing that.
Hmm. Definitely. Well, I want to talk about what you're doing with Cuvette and how that even started, because you were just talking about teaching at a community college and then going back to school for your PhD because you wanted to hone in on your teaching skills. So, what was next, or how did this Cuvette journey? How did that start?
Spite. Uh,
Really?
I sound like such a spiteful person, but man, some of the best things I've done in my life have been done just because
Just
someone
prove
told me I
people
couldn't.
wrong.
Yeah, someone told me I couldn't, and that to me
Yeah.
is like, yeah, bet, let's go. Like
Yeah.
that's just
I love that.
it's
I
like,
love that.
it's like I dare you for me. I'm just like, okay, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, like I mentioned, I found that scholar at the University of South Florida, and they were really supportive in me exploring critical theory and applying that to my research. But what it
Mhm.
uncovered was that a lot of the research that had been done in equity and chemistry education research specifically to that point had been really harmful. As I
Oh.
was applying the critical lens to it, I started noticing that there's a lot of white saviorism in the words that we're using. There's a
Mm.
lot of deficit talk in there. There's a lot
Wow.
of methodologies that are supremacy based that are
Mhm.
not helping us achieve anything because they're just perpetuating
Yeah.
the issues.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that was hard because right now you're in charge of advancing the theory base a little bit. And that does
Mhm.
require you being, if you're being critical and you're applying a lens that involves critiquing what has come before you and identifying and
Mhm.
educating your colleagues about the harms that that does and how we could do it better if we aligned
Mhm.
ourselves with critical theorists who have actually made really good ground in these fields, in law, in psychology, in neuroscience, in economics, and in other fields, and being able to say, like, look at all these great things that our colleagues
Mhm.
are doing over here and the achievements that they're making by applying a more up to date view of things.
Yeah.
And
Seriously.
so people got offended. People really got hurt, and there was this whole mentality, at least in science, in chemistry education, of
Mhm.
you have to honor the greats, you have to honor the giants who came before you and who carved out this
Oh.
path, and like la la la,
Oh
and
man.
it's you know
Yeah.
yes, they have done great things. Our colleagues have done great things, but they have
Mhm.
also caused a lot of harm. And
Mhm.
we all have, right? Is there any one of us who
Yeah.
can say we haven't perpetuated some sort of toxic norm in our culture? Because I can't
Mhm.
say that.
No.
So, I write papers and I'll call people out and they don't like that. And then they say, you don't get to publish because I didn't like what you said. And
Wow.
so the reviews came back on so many of my works being like, methodology 10 out of 10, would read it again, love all that. What I hate is how this makes me feel. And so we're not going to let
So
you
it's
publish that.
personal.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got receipts, but yeah, like there's just so many reviews where like I just disagree with you in your view, and so
Oh.
I don't recommend that you get published, but thanks,
Oh
And so finally I
man.
was like, you know what? I was reading some works of a critical scholar whose advice in these situations was to just create a space where you can do what you want to do to achieve what you
Mhm.
want to achieve instead of trying to make it work in the box that you're in the
Mhm.
systems that are already in place. Separate yourself from that entirely. And so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, that means starting my own business, starting my own journal, starting my own spaces where my colleagues who also want to discuss these things or even just be welcoming of different perspectives and opinions
Mhm.
can host a forum and a space for that. And so it started as a journal, and then people were like, but we want a place to talk about the journal. And so I was like, okay, well, now it's
Mhm.
a professional learning community too. And then it went from there to being like, hey, can we hire you as a consultant to work on our project? And I was like, sure. Now it's a consulting firm also. And then they were like,
Wow.
okay, well, and this is the next step. Now a lot of people are contacting me being like, hey, you're doing really cool stuff with this consulting thing, and I'm getting really sick of my job in academia. How do I do what you did? And so now the firm is
Wow.
evolving into like a professional development space for those people. It's just, yeah, it keeps growing.
That is incredible. I love that how it just keeps growing really naturally and you're taking on more and doing more. Has that been difficult at all? Like taking on more and doing more or what is that process been? How do you know that you had the capacity to go and do more?
I wish my colleague Tamara was here because they would tell you because they've been with me on this journey. Oh, it's been there've been seasons. Let's go with that
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
And in one of the seasons, we were exploring the literature around workaholism. And I
Oh,
only got into it because my colleague at another institution tweeted about how their health is declining so fast. And now that they're an
wow.
assistant professor on the tenure track, they're only 2 years in, and they've noticed their physical, mental health has just been completely wrecked.
Oh
And it
man.
got me thinking, like, oh man, they really have it bad. We should study this and help them. And as I was reading the stuff, I could feel, so I believe in God, and I could just feel God being
Yeah.
like, you picking up what we're showing you? Are you processing that this is you too? I got called out so many times, so many
Oh man.
times.
Yeah.
They were like, workaholism looks like this. And I was like, oh. And then they were like,
Like I look you in
workaholism
the
is also
mirror.
this. So
Oh
it put me on
man.
this journey, Paul. It put me on a journey, and it was months,
Mm.
and I'm still in it. But where I'm at right now is that I limit myself to 6 hours of work per day. And that's
Oh.
focused, time recorded, tracked work. So it's not simple to do, even though it sounds shorter than a normal day. But once that limit gets hit, it is my job to disconnect. I have two
Hmm.
young children. I have a beautiful husband. I have this family that needs nurturing. I have a bajillion plants. I have a lot of responsibilities, and I can't just be slaving away at the computer and not processing life.
Hmm.
So,
Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? Then coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to IncrediPaul for help. So what are you waiting for? Go to incredipal.org/coaching, IncrediPaul.org/coaching, or at I am IncrediPaul on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself.
that's what I do now. I limit myself, and I have all these systems in place. And workaholism has been a very educative journey for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's yeah, that's a lot to unpack. I could definitely relate on being on the workaholic spectrum. I'll put it that way. And I tell people, I think I said on the last podcast too, that I'm a recovering perfectionist, just because I
Oh,
want things done in a particular way. And I'm usually
yes.
my own worst critic, but working on it. But yeah, like for what you were mentioning about being a plant mom and a mom and a wife as well, yeah,
Yeah.
that just learning to have that balance, and it's definitely a journey. It's not something that you just flip the switch and you just continue to do it, because I'm sure there, at least for me personally, there's time I have good days, I have bad days, because I know when I shared with your group the stuff that I was doing as far as this podcast, the
Yeah.
coaching, the nonprofit, and that's all on top of working a normal 9 to 5 in manufacturing, which is not the most calm environment to work in. So
No, no, and I know you're married and you are
that is,
faith-based, and
yeah,
there's just
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot that also comes with that. It's maintaining a relationship in a loving space requires a lot of attention, and
Mm-hmm.
it gets so, I think our I'm going to say our culture, referring to United States, or
Mm-hmm.
even academia. I think our
Oh yeah.
culture really doesn't have a great grasp of what it takes to lovingly invest in a partnership and not let work
Oh
consume your life.
no, it's
No.
incentivized to work more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, you mentioned perfectionism. It's so hard when the qualities that helped you succeed keep you from thriving. It's so hard.
Mm, mhm. That, yeah,
Because it
no, you
works,
put that perfectly.
it's not
Yeah,
fair. You should
yeah,
be like,
it's really not
this
fair.
got me here, and
Yeah.
now it's killing me. And like,
Mm.
what the heck? I thought this was supposed to be good all the way.
Yeah, right, right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'm curious as far as what has your journey been with this whole idea of work-life balance? I have some thoughts on what work-life balance is, but I'm curious as far as what was there like an aha moment? Because I know you mentioned when you were doing that workaholic study, was that it, or was there something before and now it's kind of like the trigger that helped you start moving in the right direction?
Oh man, there were lots of things during that.
Mhm.
So we spent a whole month, Tamara and I, and we were studying all the literature on workaholism and what it is and how to identify it and why it manifests and how it persists and just we spent a whole month discussing it.
Mhm.
And everything happened incrementally. Like it was just one discovery after another. And like I said, at first I thought I was doing this for my colleagues because I was like, I'm good. I don't work. I have children. So I have them who remind
Yeah.
me like, hey, have we
Mhm.
eaten today? Like, like I got to make nutritious meals. I got to color. I need Lego time. Like,
What
I
time
thought
is
I
it
was doing
for?
really good, right? I thought I was doing great.
Yeah.
But some of the watershed moments that really helped crystallize my understanding of just how workaholic I was so one thing was asking me to track my time. That was a
Mm.
big one for me. Tracking my time and actually seeing the pie chart of work versus family versus partnership
Oh,
versus
okay.
self. That
Ooh,
was like, wow,
ooh.
okay. Like how much am I actually, and how do you say unaligned is that from my beliefs as a person? Do I
Mhm.
believe that I'm a workhorse and that's who I am and that's everything
Mhm.
about me? Or do I have a faith? Do I have a husband? Do I
Mhm.
have children?
Mhm.
So that was a big thing for me, time tracking.
Mhm.
The other one was monotasking. Whew, man, monotasking is hard. So, can you
It's
imagine? They
so
were like,
hard.
okay, when you drive, just drive. When you cook, just cook. Don't listen to a
What?
podcast. Don't do
What?
nothing else. Just cook. Yeah.
Oh.
I was like, oh, that sounds awful. But that's how you detox. And then you start to
Mm.
realize, like, wow, I've been doing 10 things at once.
Mm.
It's crazy, crazy, crazy. And then there was a third one I wanted to tell you. Let me see if it comes back to me. It was tracking my time. It was monotasking. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this one I'm still struggling with. I'm just gonna be honest. Boring breaks.
What do you mean by that?
So the goal is to do 3 a day during your work hours. Is to pull yourself away from work and do nothing. Not
Oh.
cleaning laundry, listening to nothing. Don't be on your phone. Don't have a conversation. Stare at a wall and do nothing for at least 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, three times a
Oh,
day. That's 30
three
minutes total
times.
where you're to do nothing.
That
I
is making me
know,
feel
the anxiety.
stressful right now. Stress.
Yes,
Just thinking about that. Oh my
exactly.
goodness.
The
So
stress of that.
when did you start your boring breaks?
Okay, I've been trying to do them for the last month. I have failed. I have not successfully had not one boring break for the last, like, this whole time that I've been trying.
But you're at least
I'm
trying.
trying, but
Yeah.
it's hard. I've gotten 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes, and so that was the best one that I had. And I'm bad at
I
it, but
think,
that's why I need to do it, right?
yeah, I can safely say that's probably 4 minutes and 30 seconds longer than I would last
Ah,
at this point. After,
you gotta try. It's so
yeah.
important. And I know that I'm a hypocrite. I totally will accept that I'm very hypocritical right now. But I gotta say, even just monotasking was a really, when you can't take a vacation because there's too many deadlines that are stacked on one another, monotasking makes a big difference and it really points out to you just how much you're doing all at once and how ineffective you are at doing all of those things at once. You are so
Mhm.
much better when you just do. You know how many tortillas I've burned trying to like heat them on the so we have gas stove and we heat them
Okay.
up and I'm thinking like, look, it'll just take a second. I'm just gonna go over here right next to it and I'm just gonna just stir the pot over here. It'll take a second. You know how many
Mm.
tortillas have caught on fire in our house because of me doing that? It's terrible.
Because of multitasking.
It's
Oh,
embarrassing.
no, you're good. That's like
Yeah.
I know you were talking about like the American culture, like what it talks about, and it really incentivizes multitasking. And even if you like, so I work with people with careers a lot, and if you just look at job descriptions, like one of the line items is usually able to take on multiple projects or stuff at the same time. I, so that's an expectation. So I think that's why it's so
Yeah.
hard to monotask because it's ingrained into the American society that you cannot just do one thing at once, even though multitasking is a misnomer. We're just switching back and forth because our brains can't really do
Yes.
multiple things at the same time. But I think
Fact.
that's why it's such a struggle.
It's so hard, Paul. And it's really hard too when I even have the privilege of working for myself. And you would
Mhm.
think that, with that blessing, I'd be so much better at all of this. But I'm still operating very much in the way that I was taught and I would say groomed even from like
Mhm.
elementary school age. And I see it in my own children when they're going to school and
Mhm.
the mentality they have around, they get a little bit of money and they want to spend it all. And so my partner and I have been teaching them that you can spend it, you can save it, which is basically spending it because of inflation, or you can invest it. And we're
Mhm.
teaching them what that means and how to go about it. There's just so many, from finances to how you spend your time. I would say
Mhm.
those two pieces, there's many toxic things in United
Mhm.
States culture. So don't take
Yeah.
this as the only two, but these two
Yeah.
pieces are very big calls to reckoning for all of us.
Yeah. I agree that I think those are the two biggest, honestly. And I think, yeah, we were talking about the monotasking versus the multitasking, as well as these boring breaks. So I can the boring breaks, like it's gonna take I'm gonna process it honestly over the next few days, maybe week, to even think about how I'm gonna do that. Because the first thing I think
Take
of,
your time.
yeah, the first thing I think about when I think of boring break is like, oh, I can do a lot of reflection about how things are going, blah blah blah, blah. Because that's,
I can be
yeah, I
productive.
know that's
Yeah.
naturally what I
Yeah.
do. So I do have times when I unplug,
Hmm.
but I usually use that for reflection. So the idea of taking a boring break is, it's honestly, it's like terrifying to me, just to be honest. But I from what you're saying, it's definitely needed.
Me too. It's so scary. It still causes me
Mhm.
anxiety whenever it's around time to do one. My heart races. I get sweaty palms. I have a really hard time doing it, and I almost will be like, "Oh, just 10 more minutes of work and then I'll do it." And then I'll forget, and then that's how it disappears. But it's really it's so challenging because you're intended to lay there, right? And the
Mhm.
goal is to let your thoughts come and go like ships in a
Mhm.
port. You're allowed to have the reflection thoughts, but you're not supposed to make it an intentional reflection exercise. You're just supposed to be like,
Okay.
"Oh, reflecting would be nice. I'm just going to let that go though, and I'm not going to do it. Oh,
Wow.
there's laundry to do. That's fine. It'll get done later." And it's so hard. It's so hard. And this is why I have failed at it so much. But it's
Mhm.
in that failure that I realize how much I need to keep trying because
Mhm.
I should be, as a rational human being with a normal brain, oh, not normal, but you know what I'm saying, a brain, I should be able to just chill for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
I should be able to do that. That should be a normal thing. And it's so odd and foreign to me that it causes me literal anxiety and I have a
Mhm.
really hard time doing it. So don't feel bad if you feel that way too. I get it.
Yeah.
I failed at it for a month.
No, you're good. I wouldn't say you're failing. I would say you're learning from it, and
Yes, that's true.
that's really the only way you build habits. I don't know if you read the book Atomic Habits or heard
Yes.
about it. Yeah, but I think from what he was saying in that book, James Clear said, like, even when you're trying to do something new, as simple as going to the gym, just getting your gym clothes on or going for like 5 minutes, just making incremental steps, that 1% better every day. And so you're at 5 minutes after a month, your goal is 10 minutes. I think you're making great progress.
That's so kind. And you're right. That reframing is needed. That
Mhm.
perfectionist in me, you see, it's
Yeah.
still there. It's still demanding that I do everything perfectly, even take a break. And so I'm really glad that you helped me reframe that. Thank you.
No, you're good. It's something I've been more intentional about, and definitely what I work with coaching is your words are really powerful, and as simple as
Yeah.
reframing things, or even the fact, and that was something I didn't realize I was doing on the last podcast. It was really a lot about mental toughness and relentless solution focus, And so the person I had, she was talking about, but when I talked about that I'm a recovering perfectionist, that's a positive thing because I'm no longer seeing myself as a perfectionist. I see that I'm on the journey away from perfectionism. So that was something I just learned recently that, so I guess I'm moving in the right direction because I can be cynical at times, but I being more intentional about being positive. I mean, I'm cynical at my jokes because I like to make people laugh, but like as far as with myself, I'm being more intentional about how I'm coming off to myself as well as to others.
That's so key. That's so, so key. And one thing that complements that I've also been learning, and thank you for sharing that, is just the idea of how you talk to yourself is
Mm,
so important. And if you
yes.
could take what you're going to say to yourself and say it to someone else, but you wouldn't,
Mm,
there's lots of stuff that I say to myself all the time that I would never say to my children, that I would never say to
mm,
my husband, that I would never say
yes.
to anyone I love. And so, what does that mean about how I feel about myself? And,
Mm,
it's time to unpack that because part of
yeah.
perfectionism is also, there's a little masochism in there. There's a little bit
Hmm.
of like, I'm going to be perfect because I'm not good enough yet. And so, being
Wow.
able to unpack that is hard.
Yeah. I like how you frame that with that filter of not what you say to yourself, thinking about saying it to others. Because oftentimes we just think about to ourselves, and you're like, it's not doing any harm. It's I'm saying it to me. But what you're saying, you
Right.
say that if you're saying that to someone else, you're doing really the same harm to yourself, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. I would completely agree with that. And that reframe has changed a lot about how
Mhm,
I deal with anger and any rage that I would feel in a situation and just,
mhm,
thinking about I don't know if other people experience this, but when you make a mistake, I have a tendency to berate myself. And
mm,
even if there was no possible way that I had the information to make the right decision when I was making the decision, even if I didn't have that, I would still berate myself for not knowing better and not doing better and not being perfect and what was I thinking and that kind of thing. And then I think of nowadays I try to think of my children
mm,
and their beautiful faces and would I say all of that to them if they made a mistake? And I wouldn't dream of talking to them like that. I wouldn't
yeah.
in my wildest nightmares speak to them the way that I speak to
Mm,
me in those moments. And so that to me is pointing out that I love them and I need to work on loving me the way that I love
mhm.
them. And it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
tough lesson.
Yeah, that's definitely really tough. And it takes a lot of self-awareness to even realize that because most people aren't at that place with self-awareness or they don't want because I think there's some of it because I've been there that you don't even want to look within because you're afraid of what you're going to find that you may not like
Yeah.
it. So you just kind of distract yourself with different things and trying to stay productive or not even productive. I would say stay busy with activities, but activities doesn't necessarily mean production because we may not be doing the right things as far as like I know you were saying earlier as far as when you're doing all these different stuff at work and with family and seeing like how the pie chart of the time you're spent, we may say that yes, we really value our relationships and our families and our friends, but when we look at what we're doing, we take an assessment on the time we're
Mhm.
spending that we're not even the time because the time can vary, but as far as what we're prioritizing, we can see that we're putting the stuff that's important, we're putting it off, and the stuff that's urgent that comes up, we're prioritizing. And when we don't prioritize what's important, what I've been learning is that those important stuff can be lost. So I don't want to lose
Yeah.
those things.
I think you said that so well. It can be so easy and one thing that helped me realize just how bad my pie chart was I was tasked with coming up with three sets of journeys that I want my life to go on. And
Mm-hmm.
so one journey was supposed to be personal,
Mm-hmm.
one journey was supposed to be interpersonal, and the other journey was supposed to be career. And I was able to come up with the career one immediately. I want this on
Yeah.
this timeline with these goals, with these projects.
Mhm.
Like, boom, I could knock out so many spreadsheets of that.
Yeah.
But then on a personal and interpersonal level, I was like, I don't even know how to make a goal on a I don't know what my journey, and it took me forever to come across what
Mhm.
it ended up being, which was
Yeah.
just to, how do you say, enhance my physical health.
Mm.
The interpersonal journey was to, oh man, see, it's so hard.
It's a journey.
The interpersonal journey was to have a bonded, loving family, and then
Mhm.
the last one was, of course, to achieve financial freedom because I realized that that's really what my goal is,
Yeah.
and careers are important, equity is important, all of that
Mhm.
is important, but more than anything, I'm just trying to liberate myself, and
Yes.
being truthful about that is hard
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
want, especially as an academic, like you want to be the bleeding heart who's like, I'm here for
Mhm.
the world. And you
Yeah.
are.
Mhm.
Also, I want to be able to make my own choices. And
Yeah.
I want to be able to advance the world in the way that I have the power to. And sometimes the bureaucracies and the policies get in the way of
Mm.
that. So it's, yeah, anyway, going back to the notion of the pie chart, when
Mhm.
I had to make goals and then break each of those goals down into three goals and then break each of those down into three projects, I realized, wow, like doing this on the personal and interpersonal level is extremely hard. And it's because I haven't flexed those neurons. I haven't created neural pathways for developing goals
Mhm.
around personhood and family.
Mm.
And that was really sad to realize that.
Yes. But I think the important thing from what you shared is that you did realize it, because it's really easy to get caught up in the time that was lost or what we were doing wrong. But
Yeah.
what I've been learning and what I tell people is that the time that has been passed, whether we feel bad about it or we continue to move forward, it's already been passed, so we can't change it. I think what's more important is what we're able to take from it and learn from it and do something different. Like it could be, I could use the word better, but I would say different, because our priorities in life can change. So when you are in college or in grad school, you don't have a family, you don't have kids, you're perfectly fine focusing on your academic career, being honed in on that. Hopefully not at the expense of your
Mhm.
physical health, because I know there's that can happen as well. But as you transition to having a relationship, having partners, having kids, that starts to become your priority. So there's different
Mhm.
seasons in life, and as you enter those seasons, it's important to understand how to transition, and that's something I'm living through right now, honestly. So I got married last year, and the job I had been doing thanks, the job I had been doing for 4 years at that time, I traveled a lot, to say the least. So ranging from 70% of the time, sometimes 90% of the time. There were two,
Wow.
yeah. So there were 2 or 3 different times where I would be on the road 11 straight weeks. So not like I'll leave on a Monday, come back on a Friday. But being the fact that I live by myself and my wife and I dated long distance before, as she moved and then we got married and everything, I could totally do that. And I still had relationships and friends with people in whatever cities I went to. So I think that helped a lot. But as
Mm.
she moved here, we got married, I started to see that as far as our marriage is something that it's really critical early on, and really in general, but definitely in the first year of marriage, because we're still like learning what it means to live together and be partners and all that stuff. So made a decision to find a job where I'm not traveling a lot. Actually ended up getting a job that I didn't travel at all. And so that has helped. So it's been about coming up on 9 months now, but I would say I've learned so much and still learning. And that's just being in a different season. That, that yeah, just being in a different season.
That's such a big transition, and it's really great that you made that decision to
Yeah.
prioritize your family and
Hmm.
make that shift into the season of being a husband. That's
Yeah.
it's a an admirable choice, and I'm really glad that you did that for you and your partner. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. She's
You're a
she's
great
worth
coach, by the way. I wanted to say that. Oh, she is worth it, and I'm so glad to hear that.
yeah, for sure. Oh,
That's so cool.
thank you for that. As far as it's learning, and honestly, as a coach, I just try to, and it's like the whole premise of this podcast, try to make people the best versions they can be, and just unlocking what's already in you, because that's what coaching really is. Is there's nothing special about me, or any good coach will tell you there's nothing special about them. They're just unlocking what's already in you and helping you to create a plan to develop you further.
I love that. I really like how you throughout the conversation have kept the framing not toxically positive, not ignoring negative for the favor of seeing the positive, but being able to acknowledge the other side of being sad about things and letting
Mhm.
things go and the benefit of that and the
Mhm.
education of that and emphasizing that side of the transaction instead of just trying to ignore it and shove it aside and be like, it'll all work out, you know. You did really well with that. And I think that you're going to be, and you are, an excellent coach.
Thank you. It's a journey for me too, because I think it's easier to tell people what to do than actually do it yourself. But
Yeah.
it's just the nature of the of really anything. There's a funny thing that people say that I don't know if you've have heard it. You may or not have heard it, but they say like if you can't do, you should coach or you should teach it.
Yeah.
So and so I mean
I have
it's
heard
funny.
that.
Yeah, it's funny, but I think that's why I try to be really intentional about acknowledging where I am seemingly lacking, because it is a journey. It is continually progressing, and not just pushing off to the side. Because the longest time I'd be like, "Oh, I'm good," and then when I don't acknowledge, there's no way to change it, no way to improve it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's you have to be willing to make the change, and
Mhm.
before that you have to be able to see it. And
Yes.
most of the time you can't really see it unless you've seen it done well.
Yeah.
So it's all about who you surround yourself with and what you decide to put inside of your brain as fuel for your future. Because you can just
Absolutely.
spend, I don't know, I know a lot of people just spend a lot of time doing truth and that sort of thing. And I got sucked into that hole and I sometimes
Mhm.
still do. But then I think about what is it that I'm programming my brain for by
Mhm.
listening to this over and over. And
Mhm.
could I spend that time maybe studying psychology and studying how I can
Mm.
improve my mindset and thinking
Mhm.
about learning about finances, because that's a
Yes.
whole another world that,
Yeah.
first generation Americans usually don't get to know a
Yes.
lot about.
Oh my
So just,
goodness. Yes.
yeah, we could talk about that, I think.
Yeah, they could do like a
Yeah.
whole three-part podcast series just on that.
Let's do it.
From like the FAFSA to
Yep.
so many things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
All the way through Bitcoin. Let's go.
oh my goodness, yes, with Bitcoin as well, and just cryptocurrency as a whole. But we are about out of time. I really enjoyed our conversation, but I want to make sure there's something else, at least about you, your story, about Cuvette in general, that you haven't shared that you do want to share.
If you're a science educator, we would love to have you join us. Feel free to come and check out the Cuvette Collective. It's there to serve you. Our mission is to connect and empower one another, and we'd love to have you there. And if you're not, that's cool. You can support us too. You can also be a part of the group. We still love you, but we're
Yeah,
really here for the science educators.
yeah, for sure, for sure. No, I love it. I love your mission. I love your passion. Like everything you shared about your journey, it resonates with me as well. It's perfectionism is something that I feel like in the science field is especially with this whole idea of publishing or perish and continuing to
Mm.
progress. It's really prevalent. Not to talk about American society with workaholism that you talked about. You share your journey about that, and even creating Cuvette out of spite, which I think is amazing that you're able to take something that is seemingly negative and grow something phenomenal out of it. I love that.
I've made a career out of it.
That's good.
That's
It's good.
that's my go-to, I guess. It's a part of being a plant mom, I think. But
Yeah.
you know, I did want to acknowledge that, you know, I'll leave everybody and you with this thought that really shook me. This is the number one thought that shook me when I was learning about workaholism,
Mm.
that workaholism is fundamentally an addiction, and
Ooh.
addictions to their core are fear-based. And so when you feel yourself being pulled in to something, the question that you could ask yourself is what I'm afraid of.
I cannot think of a better way to end that. Like,
Good
when you
luck.
when you pull yourself feeling addicted. Wait, can you say that one more time? I think I'm gonna push it.
Yeah. Yeah, when you feel yourself getting sucked in, because you know how you wake up and immediately it's like work, or you know,
Mm.
you're trying to spend time with your family, but it's work, you know.
Mhm.
When you feel, and that can go with any addiction, when you feel yourself having those thoughts where your gravity is outside of you and you're getting pulled into your
Mm.
addiction, the question you can ask yourself is, what am I afraid of? Because
Wow.
every addiction is centered in fear. So most of the time with perfectionists and workaholism, it's, are you afraid you're not good enough? And
Mm.
exploring that and is hard, but that's, asking yourself that question is a really good start. What am I afraid of? Am I afraid I'm going to miss a deadline? Why?
Mm.
Why am I afraid I'm going to miss that deadline? Do I not believe in myself that I can get it done in the time allotted? Why?
Wow.
Did I not give myself enough time because I expect myself to do too much? Am I not being kind to myself? Okay, why am I doing that? And
Mm.
just keep following that
Yeah.
down, and eventually you're gonna hit some bedrocks of truth of, maybe I don't love myself enough. Maybe I don't honor and respect my energy enough. And, you know, good luck with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Have a good session with your therapist.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so everyone listening, if you're listening, you should be watching on YouTube. You have some homework to do as far as what Vanessa just shared, that you need to ask yourself why. What is pulling you through? What are you afraid of? I love that. I have some homework to do. Sorry, I don't know how long that homework is going to take me. I'll follow up with you. That's hold me accountable as far as what am I afraid of? Why am I working so hard? But no, I've loved this conversation, everything you shared. I want to make sure people can connect with you on your socials, websites, wherever you want people to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Paul, if you're blessed, you will have a lifetime to work on it. And you guys can all connect with us at, all the social handles are Cuvette.org. And if you Google Cuvette Collective, you should be able to find something about it. As Cuvette is a weird word. And, you know, there's lots of ways to pronounce it. And, and also you can find me on my socials at Vanessa Rosa Ph.D. Because I had to flex that I got it.
Yes,
So.
you have to. You have to.
I do.
It's a big accomplishment. Thanks again for being on the podcast, and for everyone listening or watching. I hope you learned from Vanessa's story and you can keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.